Finally made it back to the cylinder head, y'all. Man, this thing needs a roof liner real bad. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and pull this wheel off and pull the cylinder head bolts out of this and lift this cylinder head out and start to transfer this stuff over onto the new rebuilt cylinder head. Keep this cracking. Well, how about that? I forgot that I can't find my magnet to pull my lifters out. So I need to go pick up a timing belt and I need to get a magnet so I get these lifters out. In the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and jack this car up, get this timing belt off down there, and then take these head bolts out. By that time, I should be able to go pick up that timing belt I ordered. And I got a little mixed nut bucket there where I can put my lifters whenever I can get them out of there. You also need to pull the oil cooler lines off of this car. I got the bolts broke loose, but you can see a drop of oil on the bottom of the oil cooler line there, and there's oil on the bottom of the oil cooler lines there. So these lines are going bad. We're going to block them off, and he could put them back on later if he wants, but for now they're going to be blocked off. These 850 turbos and 98 S and V70 turbos, XC70s, came with this thermostat oil cooler system to try to help cool the oil. They figured since it had a turbo, the oil would get hotter. And the system really wasn't that efficient. It used to bring the oil temp down about 10 degrees. That's about it. This is the thermostat that is bolted to the side of the engine. If you got a non-turbo car, it's got this plate here, block-off plate. Since that system is not efficient, mechanics been bypassing that thing for 20 years. They take off the thermostat and then they put this block-off plate on it and just bypass it. It costs you about 10 degrees. In the modern day engine oil system, 10 degrees means nothing to oil temp. Doesn't cause any wear, tear, nothing. So I caught all the oil that came out of the thermostat connection. I caught all the oil that came out of the radiator in. That fluid only runs through the end of the radiator, and that's how much fluid I got. Looks like about 4 or 5 ounces. Got just a couple of drops on the ground that I'm gonna clean up. So I'm gonna put this block off plate on after I clean that off and never have to worry about these leaking oil lines again. That's about $1,000 to $1,200 job. Low side 800, high side 1,200, and they're not lasting long nowadays. The newer ones, I've seen them leak in a year, 4,000 or 5,000 miles. You don't have to take the thermostat off. You could push it down under there, especially if you got the screws in the front of those lines like this one had. But when you got the intake manifold off, it just makes it easier to get those lines out of there. Or you could wait till you do your radiator to take the lines out. We didn't want anything leaking over a little bit of time, so we took it out of this one. Taking the lines out. And I'm going to save the thermostat for the owner so he can put it back if he wants to later. This car is going up to Alaska, so I don't know why they would ever need oil cooler lines, but he'll have that option. Let me say this about these oil thermostats. So when the engine is cold, this is closed and it stops the oil from circulating to the radiator. As the engine warms up, that spring retracts and it opens up, allowing oil to flow up to the radiator. Occasionally, these things will howl while the engine is warming up. Between cold and hot, when it's open a certain degree, the engine may howl for 30 seconds or so. Then once the oil heats up enough and it's open all the way, it'll no longer howl. So you do need to be aware of that. If you got a car that howls when it's heating up, this may be the culprit. Not that it's not working, just that sometimes they howl. And there they are. When I first heard a mechanic taking those out, I thought the guy was crazy. But then I heard another mechanic say it. I asked him why he didn't publicize it. He said he didn't like the whining he got from people, so he never did. So I did my scientific test, which I have a link for in the comments, and realized that it didn't affect the oil at all. So I've had mine off a Panther for about 75,000 miles. Panther's at 520,000 miles now. Well, this is a bit of a disappointment. These lifters are the old style. Somewhere in 96, they switched from the old style to a new style lifter. These are prone to ticking and more startup noise, and also they're prone to bad engine starts. Kind of like a lawnmower syndrome, not building compression up, not closing the lifters all the way, or letting them open all the way. If I'd have known this, I would have brought some lifters with me. Let me check this engine serial number, and maybe you guys can check yours in the future to see if your car has these old lifters. Serial number 5394, looks like 17. 539417. Still has the old lifters. Look like the timing belt was done at 150 in 2011, unless it's been done again since then. I think the owner said the timing belt was done in 2015. So the belt's not bad, but it doesn't have long to go, just aging out. All right, I got those lifters out. Let me go ahead and break these head bolts loose and unplug this temp sensor and lift this head up out of here. Crap, this is something I was afraid of. I have this impact socket 14. I actually have a deep 14 that's almost this long, and I thought I could get this to work, but my socket don't fit down in my cylinder head. So that kind of sucks. So I need a socket that's not much bigger than that. So let me take this with me and go get me a 14 socket. I have a 3/8 inch socket, but I don't like breaking tools when I'm torquing these down. So I'm gonna go find me a deep 14. So I'm gonna shut this down for now, go get my timing belt, get the right socket, and come back and finish this up. Okay, I'm back. Lowe's is the only one that had a 6.14 half-inch drive, and it's impact. I think it'll fit. It's just tiny bit smaller than the one I have. So as I cross my fingers, oh man, I'll be scraping the paint off of that thing, trying to get that in and out of there. That is a tight fit, but it fits. So let's go break these bolts loose. Let me go grab my cheater. To break these bolts loose, quarter turn at a time, starting on the outside, staggering into the inside. So do 2 on this side, 2 on that side, 2 here, 2 there, 2 there, 2 there. Get them all in. So I may put a little oil on this tool so it can spin in these tight holes better. For some reason, my new socket wouldn't go down on this bolt, but my 14 3/8 would. So I'm gonna try to break it loose with that and a impact adapter. See what happens. Hopefully it'll break loose. So there you have it. All of the bolts are out. This is the bolt that the socket wouldn't go on, and they all appear to be the same length, so none of them broke in the removal process. So let me grab that socket, see why that didn't fit. Very strange. That's what happens when you have machining errors. Stuff doesn't work for you. And that socket, oh, it went on at that time. Must have been something with the angle of it inside the head that stopped it from fitting on there. It's really strange. So hopefully I won't have no problem getting that in there. Hold on, maybe this is the one. Nope, it fit too. So it must have been something with the angle of the tool, wouldn't let it in there. I also want to mention that this socket did not fit in 3 of the holes in my cylinder head, so I had to use my other socket. There it is, folks. The head is off. It was hard getting this head exhaust studs out of here. I think the studs may have been backed out some. It's causing it to hang up. It's the hardest one I've ever gotten out of there. But I got it out, and there's that burnt valve. Number 2 cylinder. Now it's time to get this gasket off of here and do the cleanup. Normally it takes an hour. Got to put a gasket on there, get all these exhaust manifold studs out of there and put them on the replacement head. Get this gasket out here, clean off the block, and find a couple of screws that I've dropped. I dropped the screw out of this serpentine belt thing, and I dropped the cap that goes on the end of the distributor, that little disc. And then I'll be ready to put this stuff back together. So you could tell that was burnt valve because how dark that exhaust is and how wet it looks. Pumping unburnt fuel down there. The rest of them are kind of not glossy, and that number 2 is glossy. Sometimes you'll know it on the piston top too. Has a little bit of carbon buildup on the pistons. I don't think I have my wire wheel with me, so I'm not going to be able to clean that off, but I'll double check and get the carbon off the top of those pistons. But you do see the cross hatching in these cylinder walls. That is really good. Let me get to work. As you can see, number 1 piston is down. I need to put this crank on the mark before I put this back together so this could be in time. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the crank until it gets on the mark, and then I'll be ready to finish cleaning this stuff up and getting ready to go back with the rebuilt head. The exhaust manifold studs that did not have the nuts come off of them, I'm soaking them in PB Blaster so it'll be easier to get those nuts off of there. So I'm going to go get the studs out of the back of that head, go get my replacement head, set it down here, and start screwing those exhaust studs in it. And then this is the last thing I'm going to do before I put that head in, is use the tool and get those nuts off of those studs. So I'm just going to let that sit a while I clean up and get this other stuff going. And I'm compressing that hydraulic tensioner. Scraped all the gasket material off the exhaust manifold. Some people take that to the machine shop and have that made true, so they don't have exhaust manifold leaks. Not common, but occasionally they do get warped, especially if you overheat the engine. Here I got the top of the block clean. Make sure you get chunks of the gasket material off. Then I brushed it with a wire brush, wiped it down. Didn't have to be spotless, but I'm gonna make it as clean as I can with acetone. Also, I scraped that off, and I'm gonna glue this gasket on here with gasket maker, just so it is in place and probably won't move when I put the head back in place. So let me get on these exhaust manifold studs. Got most of the carbon off of that piston. A couple of them wasn't as bad as that, but again, I would have to raise them top dead center to hit them with the wire wheel, but I don't even think I have my wire wheel, so I'm gonna wipe the crumbs out of these cylinder walls. That stuff should blow through the exhaust as soon as I start the car, but I'm gonna wipe it out anyway. I believe I have the timing mark on. I'm gonna double check that. Then I'm gonna check down these bolt holes, make sure I don't have any coolant down there. Make sure every one of those is dry. You don't want to be screwing cylinder head bolts on top of coolant that may have gotten down in those bolt holes. This first bolt hole was dry, number 1 exhaust. The next 4 were wet. The one there had oil in it. I mean a lot of oil. And the one back there had a little oil in it. The one right here had a lot of oil in it and a lot of coolant. The next one had a little coolant. The next three were pretty much dry. So I got all the holes dried out. I'm gonna wipe this stuff off with acetone and glue that gasket on there and then deal with this PCV. At the timing mark right on the money down there. Let's see if we can zoom in on it. See, it's got that notch near that oil pump nipple, right on the money. And as you can see, the cylinder is not top dead center. It's down about 1/8 of an inch. I ordered these parts from Laos, Volvo in the Chicago area, mainly because they have original Volvo head gaskets and I like using the original head gaskets. Don't use aftermarket head gaskets. Then some of their prices are cheaper than everybody else's. The downside is it takes you 10 days to get your parts from them. So got to keep that in mind. You got to order your parts 10 days ahead of time or you're going to be waiting on them. There it is, folks. The Volvo head gasket. Usually it has like that copper spray coating on it. I don't see it on this one. We'll see if we can see it when it's opened up. This hose right here is expensive. It's like $175 on Volvo. On a couple of our other supplier sites, this thing's over $200 now. So I just got the parts that I think I absolutely had to have. Cam seals, valve stem seals. Here's that water pipe gasket. So let me glue that in place. I just put a little dab of this blue gasket maker on there, ideal for water pumps and thermostats. Just to glue that on there so it don't move. A lot of times I used to tie that on with dental floss, and you know, dental floss, it won't make it leak, but sometimes it moves using dental floss. So I'm gonna go ahead and glue it with this. The last time this PCV was done, it was done with Volvo parts, as you can see there. However, it has these clamps on here, which are normally IPD clamps. I love those clamps. The box appears to be spotless. You can usually reuse the box. So I ordered this hose that goes up to the head. That's hard. I got this hose because somehow it got broke. And I got this hose right here. So I'm going to hit the box with some brake parts cleaner just to make sure it's clear. I'm going to check the hole down in here. Make sure it's clear. And it is. I'm going to run a zip tie down there. Make sure that's clear. I'm going to run a zip tie down there. Make sure that's clear. I got that little hose there. I'm going to replace that. And put this PCV back together. And set this head gasket on. Work on these exhaust studs. Oh my gosh, look at these miniature butter cookies. I really haven't eaten much sweets since last April. I haven't purchased any sweets. So these are going to be a good treat for me. Miss T gave me these when I was in the Dallas area doing that transmission replacement. I ran that zip tie down there. It hit oil in the oil pan, felt no restriction, so that's good. Also, if you don't see anything in the box or in those ports, it's likely clear down into the oil pan. So whatever you do, that hose right there, that short hose with that metal collar, do not put aftermarket stuff in there. Make sure you put a Volvo only. I've seen those aftermarket ones leak in just a few months. Massive oil leak. Getting late. Probably 30 minutes from being dark. And I got another work stoppage. Getting those nuts off of these studs. The stud holder was having a hard time holding it. And the nuts come off and strip the threads off on these exhaust studs. So I need to go get 3 of these and 3 nuts from a parts store. And then I could put this head on. But that's not going to happen tonight. Time I leave, come back, it'd be 8:30. So let me go find these. If not, I'm going to have to get them from the salvage yard and get this head on in the morning.